I don't know. I guess that this is like in my way, the way that I still get to experience them, and the other people that are gone is to kind of make them be such a big part of the things that I'm doing for each step. So a lot of it's like, you know, instinctual ways of just like, oh, I want to do this thing. Like, it just makes sense to dedicate the gallery to him. But it's also kind of like down the road trying to figure out like, why do I want to do these things? And like, how is this like part of what I'm doing to cope? And I think I've always realized that it's like, it is part of that. It is part of my process for dealing with things. But I guess the further along you get into it, the more it makes sense, like why you're doing it and how it's supposed to be the thing that's helping you, or see how it is helping you, or, you know. So it's been pretty beautiful. I mean, it definitely feels like the most significant thing that I've ever done. For sure, I mean, to me, the most important thing I've ever done. Hands down. This one is kind of prominently at the center where my grandpa Donnie would have been. There was these two Ocotillo on the property, on my grandma's land, and so there's a smaller one and then there's the really large one, and so I always thought of the smaller one as being my biological grandfather, my grandpa Donnie, and the larger one being my step-grandfather, being a representation of him, my grandpa Richard. They were best friends growing up, and when my grandpa Donnie, my biological grandpa, he passed away when he was really young, in his early 20s. He had been shot, and then he overdosed on the medication he was taking to cope with the pain. He was shot while in custody in Las Cruces. And I always thought of the smaller one as being him because it was kind of like maybe like had something to do with the shortness of his life, and it was stunted in a way. Whereas my grandpa Richard, his best friend who took care of his kids and my grandma, and eventually married her and took really great care of us and raised us as his grandkids, you know, he got to live a much fuller life until he was in his 60s. Ocotillo has always been super important to me and my family. My grandfather used to tell this story about when he was a young man living in Palm Springs, California, how the Ocotillo had saved his life. So I guess he had been hang gliding off this mountain near Palm Springs, and he didn't have enough momentum to pull himself up out of the canyon. He had two options. One was to crash full speed into the canyon wall, probably break his neck, fall 30 feet, or put himself down in a really big Ocotillo like this one. And he chose to crash land himself, and he got mangled. My grandma told me recently that she was the one that she made him go to the hospital afterwards, even though he really didn't want to, and he was all bleeding and cut up. But it saved his life, because the other option would have been him crashing into the wall. And so he would always talk about the Ocotillo and how it saved his life. And when he passed away in 2015 from cancer, you know, when someone leaves, the only things that, all you got left is their memory. And so like the things that trigger the memory are as much them at that point as anything else. And so, you know, that could be a photograph, that could be a tombstone, that could be just about anything, whatever triggers the memory. And so because of that story and the way that he talks so lovingly about the Ocotillo and this enormous one here in his yard, the Ocotillo kind of became, you know, the symbol of him, the symbol of my biological grandfather and my uncle when he passed, and now Cristian, now that he's gone. And so it just, when I see the Ocotillo, and it stretches from here in Cruces, where I grew up, all the way back to where my family's from in Palm Springs. So it becomes this, you know, important symbol that kind of lives in the same areas that my family lives and that I've lived throughout my life. And it becomes as much like a living representation of of them as anything else left. So it's basically them. It becomes a physical, organic, living embodiment of their being at that point. So they live through the Ocotillo Ancestors. So this is actually the neighbor's fence, and when we were little kids, we would always take, like, anytime, a lot of times when they wanted to take photos of us, we'd come outside and stand in front of the fence or stand on the fence, and same with like the generation before us. And we would go, me and my cousins, we would like crawl underneath the fence, and we'd take shovels back there and just dig holes in the neighbor's yard, and just like dig this biggest hole that we could, and then like leave it for a day, and then come back and we have to fill it up. But that's all we would do. Like, just like right on the other side of the fence, we'd go and dig the biggest hole that we could in one day, and then fill it all up later, later the next day. We'd walk on the fence all up and down it, and yeah, it's starting to fall apart now, which is kind of sad. Yeah, we used to spend so much time out here, like in the summers, especially. We'd come, when we lived in Durango, I remember being in Alburquerque and calling my cousin Mal and getting on the phone with him and being like, we're only 3 hours away, I can't wait to see you, cousin. Being little, like 4, and just as the most exciting thing to come to this house. Then we'd spend so much time here. I mean, a lot of our cousins, but mostly me, Mal, Carlos, and Christian. And yeah, it's just the most special place on earth. And we'd like sleep on the couches downstairs. And Christian used to talk about when we were really little, like he had to be like 4 years old. Talk about how he had 10 girlfriends. and we, of course, didn't believe him. But his favorite, he had 10 girlfriends, but his favorite one, her name was Jasmine. And then we'd always tell him that WWE wasn't real. And he hated that. He'd get so mad. He'd be like, no, just do it, it's not real. Sorry to tell you, sorry to break it to you. I'd be like, no, it's real. You guys don't know. You guys don't even watch it. Just go and like lay in my grandma's room, and she'd watch NCIS and Law and Order SVU, just like the worst shows. But I'd lay on the bed with her and talk to her, and she'd just listen. Like when I was like in middle school. That was pretty cool. Yeah, me too.
Be safe, bro. It's crazy out here.
I know it.
People are like dropping like flies, bro.
I know. Or 2 weeks ago when my grandma passed away, my maternal grandma. I don't mind putting it in like that. I was over at her house, and do you think it's bad? With all my family was over there. And I was, you know, I like being around family when that type of stuff happens, but I just really wanted to be over here, I think. Like, and so I left and just came over here and swam and went upstairs and took a nap and just came back down and watched a movie with my grandma and had a quiet evening, walked around out here in the desert. And that was really nice, and like having a space like that just feels like so peaceful. It's a really special thing. And up here too, there's the view of everything. You can see everywhere else that you've been or spend time. Like I can tell exactly where my house is from here, where the gallery is, and that's beautiful, but it's like coming up here and being able to, it's a place for perspective and like taking a step back and getting to have another view of your life, I think. It's pretty awesome. memories with other people that are still around continue to go on, and that's really beautiful. But it's like hard when it's like you only have a finite amount of memories with every person, but you only have so many memories. I mean, I guess it's cool. That is the beautiful thing about doing this gallery and putting the Ocotillo in there to represent family that's gone. It's like, in a sense, they are still a very active part of the story. So it's not over, you know, like it's not the end. His story didn't end until 2020. His story has made it further and will continue to be a part of what I do. And it's just weird. It's weird to think, you know, having kids one day or other generations and telling them about Cristian and then not getting to experience him. You know, getting to be an artist and getting to create things out of your experiences or whatever you want is really beautiful, because then it's like you're bringing it up and you're choosing to bring it up. And it's not like, you know, when he first passed, I was working at a brewery and just, you know, it hit you in the middle of a shift and you couldn't do anything about it. You're there and it's halfway through a shift and you gotta get beers out and you gotta smile at customers and you gotta provide good service. So it's on somebody else's turn at that point and you kind of stuff it down. And that's how most people have to cope with things. It is when you're heading into a job interview or getting to class. I mean, when my uncle got killed, I was in the middle of an art class and I got the phone call and I waited. I went outside, I took the call, I went back into the class and I waited until the professor was done lecturing, and it was a real small class, like 12 people. And I asked to talk to her in the hall, and just immediately started crying, you know, and couldn't hold it in. And she, you know, was super gracious and said, you know, go leave class, go deal with this. And I did, and I had to walk all the way across campus, and like that was super rough. That was not on my terms, because that was, you know, here I am at this place where I'm supposed to be achieving a goal, getting my degree, bettering myself, being a part of this prestigious university. You know, there's a prestige to it, getting to go get your education, and then I'm sucked back in, not on my terms, into this horrible, horrible thing. And walking across campus at ASU and just bawling my eyes out, and I'm not afraid to cry in front of people, but just bawling my eyes out uncontrollably and seeing people and looking them in the eye and they don't know what's going on, and you're just, like, that's one of the most vulnerable things that you could ever experience, and not in a positive way. Like that's when it's not on your terms, and that's when it's hard. It's like feeling like as much as you can do to better yourself and get that education and go on, but then just you're like pulled back into this thing. I mean, that's what most people have to deal with most days. So it's like, yeah, making work about it and getting to be an artist, and like that is truly lucky and a blessing, because you're choosing when you get to make it about that. And then to get to put on like a big event and make it all about that, and to have a gallery and name it after, you know, your cousin, after Cristian, and get to, you know, all the last, like this whole chunk of time where I've been working on this thing, it's all been about him and about me processing it, you know, about how do I get to that point where I feel better about it. And dealing with it every day is like, now I'm at the point where most days are fine, you know? And there's those weird moments that creep in all the time. But it's better, being an artist and making work about it is better than catching a moment in a serving shift where all you want to do is just sit down and cry, but you gotta get beers out, you know? You gotta work. So I think I'm pretty lucky, and I think it's hard, but it's best case scenario, I think, for sure. For sure. Violence will kind of abruptly cut cut short a lot of things, cut short life and cut short teachings, you know, and that's always been something that I felt like I probably missed out a lot on, was not getting that knowledge passed down from my grandfather. You know, the resilience of these desert plants and of the Ocotillo specifically just really kind of shows how that remains, you know, and continues to grow. Pretty special when you think about it like that, I think. And it's like, as cool as it is to like to have the gallery and like dedicate it to Cristian and all that, as cool as that is, it's still like would be cooler to have him there for it. So just weird, like he was supposed to be there for that moment. It'd be different, but it would be better if he was here, for sure. It's become such a big representation for me of people that are no longer here physically with me. So putting the Ocotillo in the gallery during the show is really awesome and special, because it's a way of kind of asserting the fact that there's still family here with us and that they're still part of it and they're still part of the story as it unfolds. And you know, I'd give anything to have any of these people here physically the night of, but having this makes it not feel lonely or not feel so hard and difficult. It makes it really special as far as, you know, having a physical symbol saying that they're still here, they're still part of it, they're still with me. They're going to continue on through the way that I live my life and the things that I do, and I get to continue their story, you know, for generations. And that's a really beautiful thing. So it's really special to have this set up here.
Go ahead and talk for me.
Testing 1, 2, 3. It's Marcus Xavier Chormicle coming at you live.